We're going to start off our afternoon with our IPEN and RON series. So in this series, we're going to be speaking about and talking about in-person electronic notarization, which is when the signer and the notary are still face-to-face, but everything is happening on a tablet or computer screen electronically, the signatures, the seal, and everything. So that's in-person electronic notarization. And then there's RON, and that's remote online notarization, where the notary and signer are not together in the same room, but they are face-to-face via audio video communication technology. And the whole notarization takes place on a secure platform. And so as I mentioned this morning, RON has really expanded. Just 2 years ago, only 10 states had approved or authorized for the use of remote online notarization technology and for notaries to be authorized to perform remote online notarizations. And now we're up to like 46 states just in 2 years. So you can see that there is an expansion on this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on remote online notarization, but stay tuned because in future series, possibly March or August, or maybe both, we'll also be focusing our attention on in-person electronic notarizations, which would be, more accessible for all notaries at this point, essentially. But yeah, today it's all about RON, remote online notarization. And we've got some wonderful pioneers in the industry who are going to be discussing remote online notarization today. And so I'd like to introduce Nancy Pratt, Strategy Business Manager for Black Knight, and from what I've heard, the happiest leader in this industry. And when you see her, you'll feel the same way. She just brings a smile everywhere she goes. Dushunna Scott, owner of Lady Scott Enterprises, LLC. And Dushunna has worked with us a lot over the years and has taught a lot at our conferences. She's so well-rounded. Not only is she a part of the, the traditional notary industry, but she also has been, she was one of the first remote online notaries in Virginia. And before that, she was a police officer. And so she's also brought us some great workshops on self-defense and just how to be aware of your surroundings and to protect yourself when you're out there on the road as a notary. So that's something she's going to bring to our conference very soon, and maybe to one of our other future series here on S3. But today she's going to join our panel to discuss her experiences as a notary, as a remote online notary. And then we have Jacqueline Phillips. She is the Director of Notary Engagement and Education for Notarize. Always a pleasure when she talks to us at our conferences. She's great at leading us in Kahoot exercises and games, and she's always so engaging. So we're having fun and learning at the same time. And then Michael Lyon, Executive Vice President of NexSys Tech. And he, you just look at him and you start talking to him and you're like, oh God, this guy knows his stuff. Like you feel it. And so we're really excited to hear from him and all of his vast knowledge in this industry. And then this whole conversation is going to be led by our very own Chris Sturdivant, Vice President of Business Affairs for the National Notary Association. For now, I'm going to let Chris Sturdivant take it away and lead the conversation. We're so excited. Thanks for joining us, you all.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Gosh, I looked down at the participants and we're up to 635. So my heart just skipped another beat. But anyways, my background here at the NNA, I've been here for almost 11 years now. Prior to joining the National Notary Association, I spent my entire career in mortgage production. So I, by way of maybe default, I kind of became the mortgage guy at the NNA 11 years ago. And part of my roles here are kind of working with mortgage companies nationwide and settlement companies to try to drive as many job opportunities as possible to our notary signing agent population. Part of those travels have included talking with technology companies and specifically RON platform providers that are all represented here today, and the growing opportunities in the remote online notary space, as Susie alluded to earlier, are growing rapidly. And we have some great people here today to share with you what those opportunities are and how to take advantage of them. And we even have Dushunna Scott here, who is one of the early pioneers in earning a living as an online notary from the Richmond, Virginia area. So I know that Susie kind of already introduced all of our guests here today, but I'm going to allow each of them to introduce themselves briefly, explain their roles or where they work, and then we'll kind of get into the whole discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Nancy. Nancy Pratt, I've known her for, gosh, a few years now. As Susie alluded to, I've labeled her as the happiest person in the mortgage industry, because that smile that you see there on the screen is genuine and real, and it's been consistent for all the years that I've seen her at mortgage events. But Nancy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Black Knight, and we'll start it off with you.
Well, thank you. It's always good to be the first, right? I'm very happy to be here. I love working with the NNA, and like Chris said, we've known each other for a long time, and it's such a good group of people. So I'm really happy to be a part of this great panel. I've been in the e-mortgage space now for, well, we're into decades now, 2 decades. And early on, it was interesting because early on in this e-mortgage space, I worked really closely with the NNA around seals and digital certificates and things. And it was before really anyone was doing much in-person e-notarization, but we were doing a few across the country back in the early 2000s. So, fast forward, we have evolved obviously to 2021 and into 2022, where now we're doing, not only in person, but remote online. So my role is at Black Knight is just leading the strategy around e-mortgage and primarily the components of an e-mortgage, which e-notarization is one of those. And so I work with a lot of different partners. I'm involved a lot in the industry and chair of the e-mortgage work group with MISMO, and real involved in that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I do, is I just sort of hang out at these sorts of events and get to meet these great people and be a part of this. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
All right. Well, thank you, Nancy. Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and NexSys Technologies and your connection with the Rocket family of companies?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the introduction. Really happy to be here. Mike Lyon, I've been in the mortgage industry since circa 1997, so a little while. Ran Rocket Mortgage's operations team, so underwriting, processing, closing, third-party vendor management for about 15 years. Came over to NexSys in late 2017, running NexSys Technologies. Some of the notaries out there may be familiar with NexSys because we provide the ClearSign platform for remote online notarization. And the way I look at it from an operational standpoint, it's the last hurdle in the digitization of the mortgage process. I mean, I obviously was involved in the Rocket side of things for a long time, and I remember looking at that. We came up with this Rocket application process, and everybody thought we were changing the world. But don't look behind the curtain, because there's a lot of parts and pieces that were moving around by hand, and one of those certainly was getting that process to the closing table. And it's one of the last things. We create this digital process, and then we turn it into paper right at the end. And very happy to see with remote online notarization, we can actually have a digital process all the way through. And we'll talk about it quite a bit here, but it's absolutely the future of closing. And it's, to me, I think that paper closings 3 or 4 years down the road, that's going to be the exception. The rule will be what we're talking about today.
All right, thanks, Michael. And Jacqueline, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Jacqueline is the Director of Notary Engagement at Notarize. I can't think of a better title for a person, because she has been so passionate about driving opportunities in the online space for notaries. So Jacqueline, why don't you go ahead?
I want to thank NNA for having this panel of trailblazers today for the remote online space. I have truly enjoyed and honored to be working with them. I want to thank our audience for taking time today to further their education and to build their business as a notary. That's important. I'm a notary myself first. I've been a notary for almost 20 years and a notary signing agent for almost 10 years. So I'm Jacqueline Phillips. So I am the owner of the Company for You LLC. And then with that, I'm also the Director of Engagement and Education at Notarize. We're one of 25 companies this year that was on the Forbes list for the next $1 billion startup. So that's truly amazing for where we've been with Notarize. So I started out Notarize with Dushunna as one of the first notaries here. and really trailblazed the remote online space. There was so much to learn, all the technology pieces, what's the X509 digital certificate, all the different pieces that the notary needs to know to be a remote online notary. It's another tool for notaries, right? It doesn't replace who you are as a notary. Bill Anderson has been drilling into our head. A notary is a notary is a notary is a notary. Doesn't matter if you're a traditional notary or remote online notary, you still need to know your basics as a notary to be in the remote online space. So I am truly excited to be here and just talk about RON. And as you can tell, I love talking about it.
I wasn't kidding when I said the job title was perfect for you in terms of notary engagement. Dushunna, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello, everyone. Again, just like everybody else said, very honored to be amongst the people on this panel today. Tough acts to follow, but I'll do my best. I am the owner of Lady Scott Enterprises, LLC, located here in Richmond, Virginia. As you heard before, I was a police officer for 11 years. And during that time, that's when I found the notary industry, and thankful that I did. And so I was a mobile notary and a notary signing agent since 2012. And then 2016, I was introduced to Notarize. And so I've been an independent contractor with them ever since. And I'm also, I guess you can say, an independent contractor on my own as well. So I do RON on my own as well as with Notarize. So very happy to be here again. Thank you to everyone who's listening in today, and hopefully, and I'm very confident that you guys will learn a lot from this panel today.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the discussion here with Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, Notarize has a couple of different business models for a notary entrepreneur to generate income for themselves. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your notary on demand business model, as well as your bring your own transaction model, so that the audience understands the clear difference between the two and the advantages of both.
Absolutely. So on Notarize, we have actually 3, but we're going to talk about 2 of them today. And that is the notary on demand. So that's where a notary is able to sign up on our platform for free and able to get calls in. So we're feeding you leads. We've built a panel of business partners that don't have a panel of notaries, but need documents notarized. And this is not only in the closing space. I also want to talk about it as just general notary public work, right? Everyone always talks about the closing, but there's notarizations that are needed on both sides, on the closing side and also or your specialized notary work, as some have been calling it here lately on the Clubhouse. So we want to be able to we service both signers on our platform. So we feed you the leads, you notarize the documents, and then you get paid part of the fee that the signer is being paid. Then we have the other model, which is your BYOT, bring your own transaction. So that's where you, the notary, you've built up your own customer base, your own clientele, or you're picking up those calls on your Google pages or your Yelp pages, and you need the signer needs to notarize a document. So you're bringing your own clients to the platform, and you're able to notarize those documents and send those documents electronically. 1, you don't have to leave your house. 2, you do everything electronically. And the signer, it's a win-win. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes for most of these transactions to happen. So the signer signs up, gets their information, enters all their information, goes through KBA, credential analysis. They meet with the notary, get their documents notarized, and then that signer is able to forward that document wherever they need to send it to.
So Nancy, why don't you, I'm going to go to you next. We just heard from Jacqueline about there are 2 different business models. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Black Knight model and how that works for notaries that are looking to build a business online?
Yeah, sure. So the Black Knights model, some of you might know it by Doc Verify. So that's our product name, is Doc Verify. And Doc Verify has been around since like 2007, I believe. And so the model is really just, it's a notary platform. And so most of our notaries use the platform to build their own business. So they can go in and they can set up their own businesses. They can, hire notaries to work for them so that they have signing services. And so that's really what the design of our platform is create your own business, do what you want to do. It isn't one that we don't feed transactions, so that's a little bit different. So you pretty much would bring, like as Jackie said, you'd bring your own transaction in, go out and look for business, but use this platform to develop your business. And so we give you the tools to do that. Many of our notaries, it's like any big notary platform. We have like 100,000 notaries, but then there's several thousand that just have built what we call an enterprise, where they've built their own business and they have mobile signing agents that work for them. So it could be Nancy Mobile Notary Services, if you will, and then I may have 20 to 30 people that work with me on that. So that's kind of the concept with Doc Verify. We're approved in all of the states. We do work in all verticals. So we, when Doc Verify was, before they were acquired by Black Knight, they strictly were just pretty much in all those verticals. Now that Black Knight has bought them, we do focus a little more on mortgage. We don't focus more on it than the other verticals, but it certainly is a big part of what we do now. And because Black Knight being a fintech company. And so we do have now the mortgage piece in it more so than they did before.
All right, well, thanks, Nancy. And Dushunna, I'm going to go to you next because you have a unique perspective. You've worked on both of these platforms, both Notarize and Black Knight, which owns the Doc Verify product. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how each one of those platforms has worked for you since you started your online business a few years back?
Sure. So I'll start with Notarize first because that's where I've been the longest. So Notarize allows me to make additional income as a notary. What that means is when I'm working with Notarize, I am answering calls from customers that they've generated. So people that have downloaded the app or going to the website and they're coming through. And I am gold status, so I can take general notary calls as well as the mortgage calls. Doc Verify, though, is where I grow my own business as an independent notary. So that's the platform that I use to bring my own customers, if you will. So those are the people that Google me, that go to my website, word of mouth. And so I'm able to make my own, again, independent notary money by bringing my own customers using that Doc Verify, the Doc Verify platform. So that's the difference between the two. So Notarize, I'm basically dealing with the customers that they generated. And then Doc Verify are my customers that I've been able to generate.
And I'll just go ahead and Jacqueline, if you want to go ahead and comment, I know your bring your own transaction model is relatively new with Notarize and it's a new offering. So why don't you just, I'll let you go ahead and add on there what the opportunity is for the notaries that want to drive their own transactions again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So for our bring your own transaction, we rolled out earlier this year in 2 states, Tennessee and Washington. So if you're a Tennessee or Washington notary on this call and you want to bring your own transaction, service your own customers, we're able to do it for those 2 states. We will be making an announcement probably end of Q4. So sometimes by the end of this year that we're going to be actually expanding that to quite more states by the end of this year, ready to roll for the beginning of the year. So that's something that the notaries have been asking us. We've been listening to the notaries, especially our Florida and Virginia notaries. They've been begging for to bring their own clients on our platform. So look for that announcement. We were hoping to do it with Rewired, but that's been pushed back because we've got so many big projects working right now, but look for that to be coming soon.
Okay. And Michael, I don't mean to ignore you. I'm going to come to you in another minute, but I'm going to go back to Nancy one more time. And Nancy, we had talked about just the types of transactions that are being generated online in your system. And while mortgage gets so much attention, there's a lot of opportunities that are non-mortgage related. Can you kind of share with us what the opportunities are for non-mortgage transactions in the Doc Verify system, and maybe what types of transactions you're seeing come through that are not mortgage specific?
I think that's been really an interesting observation for me because I came out of the mortgage industry for all these years, and so when I came over here and had this platform that worked in other verticals outside of mortgage, I didn't realize how many. See, I'm not a notary, you guys, so I didn't realize all this other notary work out there. Like I could see Dushunna and Jacqueline laughing at me because there's so much business out there. And we do, we're in the auto industry, the insurance industry, just the one-off industries. We have, this is kind of an interesting where we have those online gambling companies. I mean, there's so much stuff that when I hear about a lot of this, I'm going, really? They need this too? And of course, there's some government work. And I was telling Chris earlier in our pre-session, we don't really do much in the healthcare at this point, just because of some of the HIPAA stuff. So I don't know if we'll venture in that, but anything that a notary would notarize can be supported outside of the healthcare, but can be supported within DocVerify. And so right now, what we run through that is we're doing about 60%, in the other verticals, 40% mortgage. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's running through the platform right now.
Yeah, so only about 40.
40% mortgage,
Okay.
60% the other. Yeah, and then of course, we support IPEN, e-closing, just e-sign, and then RON.
Thanks for that, Nancy. And so now that we know that there's opportunities out there besides just mortgage, I do want to focus on mortgage a little bit, because most of our audience today historically have completed mortgage signings. It's probably a predominant percentage of the income generated by notary signing agents. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael, and I want to just kind of get an update on where NexSys is at in terms of the transactional volume that you're seeing, some of the challenges that are specific to mortgage related to RON, and kind of just get your overview in terms of where we are at today with RON mortgage signings compared to where we're at even 12 months ago or 24 months ago, because it's evolved so much.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it's interesting is just on this panel alone, what you'll find is that as a notary, there's 3 different providers out here, and we all have a little bit of a different business structure or mindset going about it. So you got Notarize, DocVerify, and then NexSys ClearSign. NexSys, we're probably 97% remote or 97% mortgage signings right now, because we're born out of the Rocket family of companies. So as a digital notary, I think it won't be unusual for you to potentially deal with different platforms, but we all basically live under the same set of rules and regulations and requirements. So there may be differences, and some you will find better than others as you go through, but don't be surprised if you're closing on different processes. The cool thing is, once you've got your digital notarization in your state, signing up for those other platforms should be a relatively easy process and help you expand your business going forward. Now, to your specific question, Chris, we've all had the fun experience of living through a pandemic, which from a digitization standpoint, I think it drove the industry forward by about 10 years in the process of about a month. We in the business have been pushing to say, look, lender or closing agent or title agent, title company, you've got to do this digital mortgage process. There's big wins to it, not only just from an efficiency standpoint, client standpoint, but also there's huge wins from a standpoint of your quality control process. The number of mistakes go down considerably. And lenders prior to the pandemic were saying, well, that's neat, we'll get to it, but I want somebody else out there first. So want somebody else, you guys figure it out, and then we'll come along later. And it wasn't a priority. And then the pandemic hit, and almost within a week, our phones were blowing up. And I'm certain that the others on this panel are the same way. Suddenly, every lender saying, well, how can we get that? Can we get those packages signed digitally? And by the way, we want you to do everything, take care of it, figure it out, and let us know how easy it is. And we're saying, seriously, now you want to get engaged with this stuff. So, but the cool thing is the lending community and the closing agents are already coming along, but the lending community has really started to push hard on this to get this digital process up to speed. Us, personally, from a NexSys standpoint, we are doing approximately 1,200 digital closings a day right now, somewhere around anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 a day. Of that total, probably 400 to 500 are full remote online notarization, meaning that everything is signed digitally, including the note, including all notarized docs. And those are done in basically all of the states that it's legal in. Now, we do have a couple large states out there that haven't taken the step yet. I noticed in the commentary, New York popped up. We'd love to get New York going. They've got to come along. California is its own thing right now. That'll be nice when we finally get through that riddle. But this ball is rolling downhill, and it's moving fast. So I think also, Chris, you asked, how does it look this year compared to last year? It's the difference between night and day. I mean, there are so many more digital closings that are happening today compared to a year ago at this point in time, and that continues to step up over time. So we are just on a call with Mortgage Electronic Registration System. They're seeing, just last year where there was about one lender that was active in the space. Now there are 50 or 60 lenders that are active in the space, having digital notes that are coming through. So as I said earlier, I think the future is incredibly bright when it comes to this digital notarization space.
And from Quicken Loans perspective alone, just from a single lender, I mean, when you get to your goal of 100% full RON closings, I mean, what does that mean from an opportunity perspective for the notaries, just so that they have an understanding of the pure demand for transactions that are coming?
Yeah, from adding in purchase transactions from in-person e-notarization, adding in the wholesale transactions, there will be upwards of over, that's close to 10,000 digital closings a day that are going through that platform. So it's pretty large. And by the way, Rocket or Quicken Loans, Rocket has 8% of the market. So it gives you a little flavor and feel for, they're the number one retail lender with 8% of the market. So there's a lot of opportunity and demand that's coming down the pike.
And shifting over to Nancy, I know that we had talked about, I mean, we're seeing lots of demand from the mortgage space in ways that we haven't necessarily seen in the past. We're seeing seller side transactions being completed or requested to be completed electronically, which, historically the sellers always just probably traveled to the local closing company on whoever was going to close the transaction. So are you seeing much in the non, even in requests involving a mortgage transaction, but that doesn't even include the mortgage that are coming through?
Oh, absolutely. So, and that is a really good point, because, there's a lot of pieces. Rocket has been doing it, and they, probably do it better than anyone right out there at this point. But then, it's really a good friend of ours in the industry always says, be as E as you can be. That's Harry Gardner's his name. I always like to give people credit for their sayings, but he says, be as E as you can be. And when you think about that, if you're not doing the full mortgage for whatever the reason, maybe the lender's not on board or whatever, if you're being as easy as you can be, you can support that seller side and do the seller documents. You can support cash transactions. And so there's different ways that you can use remote online, and you can still support that, that whole series of e-notarization. So I think that's really important. And what most of the platforms see is big numbers in the seller and the cash transactions. Now, Rocket's got all of their, I'll give Michael, I mean, Rocket's got all their stuff together because they have, they have that technology, they have the e-note, they have everything, but a lot of lenders aren't quite there yet. So you can support pieces of the transaction today.
Yeah, we've often referred to it as walk before you run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably been one of the more interesting things that I've witnessed from my chair over the last few years, is just seeing the demand for pieces of the transaction, whether that's seller side or whether that's part of a hybrid closing that are being executed electronically, and the benefits of such. Jacqueline, what are you seeing on the Notarize platform in terms of transactions that are non-mortgage related or not specific to the actual loan, while we wait for more lenders to get on board?
Oh, we're seeing lots of general notary public work. We're probably, I want to say probably 60-40, more where we do a lot of general notary public work. That's where we started, right? We started out with doing most of the postal forms for folks that are needing they're setting up virtual mailboxes. So that's heavy on our platform. Then of course we have Carvana as one of our business partners. So they're moving cars across the United States. We have TIAA, people that are pulling money out of their 401ks right now because of the pandemic. And of course, we grew, like Nancy and Michael says, with the pandemic, we grew 600%. They were knocking our doors down. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was like everyone now needed it now, when we've been saying for a long time, you need to start the process and grab those low hanging fruits, right? Like Michael and Nancy says, seller packages, those are easy. You can do those all day long. If you can, at least as a title company, start those processes, just doing those as much as possible, or even doing some hybrid models, because we do those on our platform as well. Grab the low hanging fruit and just put your feet out there. And the same for notaries. Put your feet out there. I mean, get on a platform or two that are feeding you the leads, so at least you can start knowing the technology. And then after that, it just becomes like you're on a bike. You just kind of get on it and you just go for it.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And so my next question is going to be for Dushunna. We've heard from all our mortgage leaders here, and the mortgage industry has been pursuing RON closings and signings for several years, and a lot goes into it. But what is your perspective from the signer's or what are you seeing from the signer's perspective? Or what are some of the frequently asked questions that the signers have for you, and are they enjoying the process?
Well, let me just say this. When COVID hit, I made so much money, okay? And reason being is because I was already ready. I was already set up with Notarize and Doc Verify. It was so easy to get set up with them. I remember getting emails from Notarize like, who can jump on? And so I was there ready to do it. But I will say this, the way to make money, and I'm kind of feeding off the chat as well. The way to make money is to be accessible to people. When people need you, they want to be able to reach you. So have a website, be Googleable, right? And so a lot of the questions I get are, how does this process work? And so you need to, as a notary, be able to respond rapidly. If they have to wait, they're probably going to go to another notary or find someone else. So I already have an email template ready that I send out to people who have those questions. Here's how the process works. Here's the browsers that you're going to need to make this process work. Then they want to know, how much do you charge? How do I pay you? How do you get the documents? And so my website is designed where they schedule their appointment, they pay, they upload their documents. So it's a very easy process for them. And then I do all of the back work prior to me meeting with them at their appointment time. So, really, and then people want to know, is it legal, right? So, and I tell them, I said, listen, I can basically notarize just about anything. But the disclaimer is going to be up to the recipient of the document if they're going to accept it. So just make sure that they're willing to accept this remote online notarization. But for the most part, I haven't had any issues, and it's the same documents that you would see on any platform, your power of attorney documents. I do get a lot of seller packages. If you build those relationships with title companies and attorneys. I literally just did one 2 days ago for a customer in Morocco. And the question that I asked him was, how did you find me? And he said, well, I reached out to my attorney, and my attorney reached out to another attorney in Ohio. I don't know who the attorneys are. I'm guessing somewhere along the line, I've done some work for them and it's, come back. So just always being accessible, providing that good customer service, being responsive to emails and texts, about your business. And that has worked very well for me.
Thanks. And Michael, I know that your company is probably a data-driven company, just like most technology companies. What are you seeing in terms of improvements in notary performance, improvements of accurate signings that saves the notary's time long-term? And what are you seeing from the consumer response to this offering?
Yeah, so starting with the second half of the section, the question, then I'll go to the first half. In regard to client acceptance, it's overwhelmingly accepted. I mean, we think about, when we talk about this digital signing, it's like we are slowly but surely dragging the mortgage industry into the 1990s. And I think we finally got it past the 2000s, and because everything else you do in life is online, and clients have an expectation that, okay, great, I start the application online, I can do the process online. You mean to tell me that now I've got to somebody's going to come over to my house with a pen and paper, or I've got to go someplace and sign something? You're crazy. So the acceptance is the acceptance is awesome. I mean, when we do we survey all of our clients that come through our portal. We do obviously have a number of hybrid closings, meaning a portion of the package is still is e-signed, and in states where a remote online notary is not allowed, they're wet signing the notarized docs. And the the criticism we get on those closings is, why isn't it completely electronic? Why are you making me sign anything when you can have this portion signed? So it's extremely positive. And then from the pure economics of the transaction, what excites a chief financial officer sitting in a lending institution, or anybody who works in any kind of efficiency structure, we've all been, I'm sure notaries who have done any kind of mortgage closing have had the fun event of the closing agent or lender saying, hey, we missed these 2 docs. Did you go back out to the house and get those signed because we missed them? Or the package was lost. The UPS package that you put in was lost. It didn't show up at the lender or closing agent. So now you got to reclose the whole darn thing. Never happens in a remote online notary transaction. The percentage of disbursement delays on a typical paper, wet signed paper mortgage runs at about 8 to 9%, which means almost 10% of the time there's a mistake that a notary or somebody else has to fix in that, and the client isn't too happy about it. On a remote online notary transaction, that falls to less than 1%. There's a dramatic difference. So, and also the process of having to check that package. Remember, in a paper signed package, there's somebody sitting at a closing agent and or lender, sometimes both, that are literally putting those rubber thumbs on and going through the package to make sure all the signatures were applied. Were they put in the right spot? And did you date that correctly? All of that is taken care of automatically in a remote online notarization because the technology does it for you. So there's incredible advantages to that process.
And Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and kind of throw the same question your way and see what are you seeing at Black Knight? What are some of the success stories that you've seen with some of the RON adoption?
Well, I think it's a lot the same as what Michael talks about. I mean, it just cleans up the process. When I'm out and even talking to settlement companies and that sort of thing, they can control a lot of that post-closing issues that they have, where, sometimes they're sending it out to, some mobile closers or whatever. It doesn't come back, like Michael said, it doesn't come back right. So they can control a lot of that by using RON and just making certain that their processes are clean when they come back in, that you don't have to re-engage the borrower, that you don't have to re-engage people to re-sign documentation and track them down. Comes back in, it's accurate, it's quicker. And I think that's the beauty of it. When you're talking to consumers, and I've seen this over the years, people are busy. I mean, obviously, let's put, pandemic aside where people couldn't leave. But, in the normal lives, people are so busy and they're going from place to place to place. And for a company to be able to offer a platform that people can come into on their own time, review their documentation, get it notarized, get it closed, and they don't have to leave their house to do it. And they can schedule it when it's convenient. They've run their kids to soccer practice and done all that, and they're home, they can take a breath and they can both get on and close a deal. That is so much better than driving around looking for a title company or even for, all of that. So it just cleans up that entire process. And on top of that, it gives a much better consumer experience. So, that's the one thing no one would do this if it wasn't a better experience. But when you're doing both, that's a win-win.
And Dushunna, I'm going to ask you, because your perspective is going to be a little bit different. Other than the institutional performance metrics that Michael and Nancy thrive off of, what are some of the improvements you've seen in your business? I know we were talking about the advantage of being able to have customers pay up front and be committed before you schedule your time. I mean, can you share some of that success that you've had with our audience here?
Absolutely. A lot of people think that if you ask for money up front, that it will turn people away. What I found, like I say, because when COVID hit, the calls were coming in. There was no shortage of work. And what you were getting was people were scheduling, but then they wouldn't show up for the RON appointment. So they've then taken that time off of your schedule where you could have actually serviced someone. So what I found is I use a system where when people schedule an appointment, they have to pay for those services up front. And so I have a list of services that they can choose from. And so at that point, I receive the payment, they upload the document, and then I meet with them at their scheduled appointment time. And that's worked well for me because now I'm servicing the serious people. It has not decline any business whatsoever. But, you know, it just eliminates the wasting of a notary's time, because I mean, we're very busy people. A lot of us, this is a side gig for us. So, you know, we work as well as run our businesses. So, you know, I'm here for the people that really need my services. And again, that's worked well for me. And so, and the reason being is because, and I'll use the Doc Verify system as an example, when the transaction is over, the customer automatically gets emailed their document. So that eliminates the notary from having to chase their money after the transaction is over. So I've been paid, the notarization has been completed, and everybody's happy. And so that's been one of the things that has worked well for me.
Jacqueline, why don't you kind of maybe give us a little summary in terms of where we're at from a state level adoption? I know that Notarize has been really pioneered a lot of new legislation in states to pass RON laws. Are there any states that are on your radar that you think may be passing in the near future and provide more RON opportunities that you can share with us?
Absolutely, I can share some of those. So on a high level, we know that we're waiting on New York, of course, with the governor change there. We're waiting for that bill to be signed by the new governor. So that's kind of like a little bit of a standstill, but we've been really working with them up there to get that hopefully signed sooner than later for our dear New York notaries. California is a hot one right now. There's several of us on some panels here that we're working with the AG there to hopefully have California on board here. I know California notaries are the largest, right? They're a lot of notaries that are California notaries. And then with California, it also allows us for those bilingual notaries. So we're also talking about making sure that the Spanish population gets service. So that's why we're really pushing for the California notaries to become remote online notaries from a digital inclusiveness point. There's some other hot ones that are kind of right now, North Carolina, South Carolina. We're working with some of those. And of course, if you know all the acronyms, RON and RIN, also working with some of the states that only have remote online notarization. And I'm thinking of that from a notary standpoint of view, not even talking about Notarize. How do we protect the notaries to make sure that they're doing a notarization that's going to that uses all the technology that we have available, credential analysis, KBA, so that we're properly identifying that signer. And of course, the notary being that last wall to make sure that we're still identifying that signer is big. So California is probably my biggest one that we're running with right now. And I can't wait for us to be able to celebrate that one.